It is 19 hours 30 all across Guyana, and it is time to enter room 592 with Dr. Yog Mahadeo alongside his co-host, senior journalist of Kiter News, Mr. Leonard Gildarie, and this evening their esteemed guests, Orin Gordon and Capt.Gerry Gouveia. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Dr. Yog Mahadeo, are you hearing us? Dr. Yog
Hello?
Mahadeo, are you hearing us?
I am here. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, it is 19 hours 30 in Guyana, and it is time to enter room 592 with Dr. Yog Mahadeo and senior journalist of Kiter News, Mr. Leonard Gildarie. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening to you, Kevin Smith. Good evening to the Kiter Radio crew, Joshua Van Slykeman, management and team of Kiter Radio. Good evening to you all. And to my co-host, Mr. Leonard Gildarie, good night to you,
Hi.
sir. Ladies and gentlemen all across Guyana, welcome to room 592, where we unleash the truth. And here tonight with us, ladies and gentlemen, is Mr. Orin Gordon. As we know, we had Mr. Gordon, I think it seems like a year ago, my brother, but it was just probably a week and a half ago. And ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Orin Gordon, he has worn many caps in his life, and all he has walked with charm and ethics and decency. He has held the post of an editor of the Trinidad Guardian, I think it was, and he has also been, won't you know, a premier lead person in ACCA Caribbean. So Mr. Gordon he's a media consultant presently, and you want to talk about lobbying and what lobbying firms can do or do, you better talk to Mr. Orin Gordon. We're happy to have Mr. Gordon here with us tonight, as we are Mr. Gerry Gouveia, Capt.Gerry Gouveia, who everybody knows needs no introduction, but let me say he has been at the helm of the Private Sector Commission, and Mr. Gerry Gouveia has been instrumental as well as a key figure in coordinating a lot of activities within the private sector, as well as calling on the private sector to stay within the realm of decency and to pay up their rates and taxes and all of that. So, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to welcome both of our distinguished guests here as we get on with our program tonight. Welcome once again. And Leonard, I'm going to leave the welcoming to you. I want to tell you that we again have brothers and sisters joining us tonight from Norway. We also have someone that inboxed me from Ireland that they'll be joining the show tonight and sending us some questions. And of course, our viewers and listeners from Minneapolis and Minnesota, New Mexico, all across the place. Leonard, why don't you do the good job of welcoming all of our viewers and listeners?
Well, of course, good evening all. Welcome to room 592. And guess what we're doing tonight? Like what we've been doing all the rest of the night, unleashing the truth. So I want to hand you over back without much ado, short time, to our good host, Dr. Yog Mahadeo. Have I done well?
Thank you. You see, Orin, as you would have told me sometime in the past, it's always good to train someone to take. A good manager always has a replacement in training, right?
I'm a humble assistant
Let's
here.
get ready to go. Succession is important.
Yes,
Correct.
Yes,
Correct. So, ladies and gentlemen, we want to talk again the politics of the day. And what did today start with? If you recall, we had the CARICOM Observer team gave their very scathing report of what transpired during these elections recount. And the CARICOM Observer team quite explicitly said that these recounts were well above the board and were credible, and that the results of these recounts ought to be used to declare these elections. So during today, we have had no less than the personality of the esteemed Madam Maya Motley, who is the Prime Minister of Barbados, but more importantly, the chairman of CARICOM. And she has made what I think is an extremely outspoken, very, very plain words, calling on everyone to respect what the recount yielded. And, you know, I want to say on behalf of the people of Guyana, Prime Minister, Chairman of CARICOM, we thank you, because in your message, you expressed your concern for the goodwill of all Guyanese. And we thank you and we thank the entire CARICOM team and CARICOM countries for watching our backs. So, ladies and gentlemen, there has been a very plain statement from our esteemed chairman of CARICOM, and she has also mentioned some very important phrases like, the CEO, the Chief Elections Officer, where would he have gotten the executive fiat from to even disenfranchise one voter? You want to recall, ladies and gentlemen, that the United Nations Charter, the Human Rights Charter of the United Nations, guarantees you all of us, the right to a vote, the right to have a government based on our votes cast. Leonard, you and I know that it was no other than Stalin, Joseph Stalin, that was attributed to the statement that, sometimes it doesn't matter who, or elections are not won by the people who cast their votes, but are won or declared by the people who count your votes. And I think Stalin is alive and kicking today within the walls of GCOM, because the votes of this country has been burnt. 115,000 votes were burnt by Mr. Keith Lowenfield, who decided he was judge, jury, and executioner. And he decided to negate those votes and declared a fraudulent government to be the winner of these elections. However, mind you, ladies and gentlemen, that is not a declaration. That GCOM commission did not meet to receive or consider that report. And against that report is what Ms. Maya Motley spoke today. Additionally, we saw statements from the ambassadors of the United States, Canada, Britain, and the European Union. And additionally, we saw statements from the OAS. Statements this afternoon came out from the Commonwealth nations. So all around the world is reminding this government that they are watching. Orin, welcome. Captain, welcome.
Thank you.
I want to ask your comment, Orin. As a Caribbean personality, you reside in Trinidad, I believe, presently. As a Caribbean personality, having your fingers on the pulse over there, what was Orin Gordon's reaction listening to Ms. Maya Motley's statement this morning?
I thought it was quite extraordinary. And the thing you have to bear in mind is that historically, CARICOM have been very reticent to get involved in the affairs of its nation states in any big or meaningful or very obvious way. Let me take you back to 1991, the first big assignment that I covered as a reporter all those years ago was the 1991 CARICOM summit in Jamaica. The summit was delayed from July to about September because of the coup in Trinidad and Tobago. And one of the uninvited guests to that summit was a gentleman named Cheddi Jagan. What was Cheddi Jagan trying to do? He was trying to put Guyana and elections and democracy on the CARICOM agenda. And he was pretty much ignored. CARICOM, as I said, is very reticent about getting involved in the affairs of its nation states in a very frontal way. And Mia Motley's comment, as was the comment of her predecessor, Owen Arthur, as was the comment of the incoming CARICOM chairman, Ralph Gonzalez, was very striking in its bluntness. It was very un-CARICOM-like. I saw a post just before coming on air from my good friend and brother, Imran Khan, who is responsible for media within the government setup, and he pointed to what he said was an extraordinary breach of protocol by Mia Motley. That may be so, but what they are seeing and what CARICOM is concerned about is an extraordinary situation. They are seeing the attempted manipulation of an election result in plain sight, in real time, by the by the chief elections officer, he has submitted 3 reports, and they've had widely varying numbers.
Yes.
Widely varying numbers. What is the formula that he's using? That was a question that Mia Motley asked. What? How is the man coming by these numbers? You know?
I'm here.
And one of the telling points she makes, she adds, not only are there questions, or I'll read the relevant quote. The Caribbean Community CARICOM is concerned about reports that the Chief Elections Officer has submitted a report to the GCOM, which is contrary to the directions given by the Commission, and which does not reflect the results of the recount processes. And this is the key point, as certified by the very staff of the Guyana Elections Commission. The people who report to Lowenfield certified these results. And he is making a unilateral decision, first of all, to toss more than half the votes and then 115,000 votes. Now, I've been in the media business for 30 years. I've covered an election or two, including electoral contests in the United States and in Britain, in which I lived for more than 20 years. And I have never seen anything like that. I have never seen one person within the electoral setup make a unilateral decision to toss half the votes.
Mm-hmm.
If he had gone through a process, let's for the sake of argument say that those votes really are tainted. CARICOM says they're not, and I go by what those 3 CARICOM observers spent weeks in the middle of a pandemic away from their families observing. They say the process was fair, and whatever may have occurred that was questionable did not occur on a scale to invalidate the results of the recount. But let's say, for the sake of argument, that they were. No one person takes it upon himself, or should take it upon himself, to toss half of the votes that were cast. And the very fact that these numbers were so different, so different in early March, in mid-June, and in late June.
That's right.
I think CARICOM is being vocal, and you can argue that the statements represent a breach of protocol, but those are fine by me, because we are dealing, and they see themselves as dealing with a very extraordinary situation where something is occurring under their noses in plain sight. The Commonwealth is of the same view, and the Organization of American States is of the same view. In fact, the striking thing about this situation is the unanimity with which the international community views this.
Correct.
There's not a paper's width of difference between everybody, between anyone on any of them.
Well, Orin, Captain, I want to come to you with this. Orin quoted rightly, and it is so. I have the statement in front of me.
Right.
Captain, there is something, I don't know if you would have heard the phrases we are using, but there is the Department of Political Information.
Right.
And that DPI, the head of that DPI, has issued a statement and saying that Maya Motley has breached protocol. Now, Captain, before you answer, Orin, ladies and gentlemen, it is Mr. Granger and Jagdeo that invited CARICOM. These people had to leave their homes amidst COVID-19, leave their children, and be here with us to supervise at our request. They're spending their own time and money. They're paying for themselves to be here. They are funding their trips. They are funding things. And now you're saying, get out, shut your mouth, and never speak? We invited you to come and we don't want to hear what you have to say. You're a breach of protocol if you say something. That has to be absolute trash. But Jerry, there is another part to it. Another gentleman has actually made a threat. Another gentleman has used words, and I want to read these words to you. He has said, we remind the Prime Minister Motley that though she feels safe today, secured in her office, like Prime Minister Gonzalez, also faces political opposition. Whereas her government functions with a pseudo-parliamentary opposition, Guyana is a true democracy, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, Guyana is a true democracy attempting to steal an election. Captain, over to you.
The gentleman is right. Guyana is a democracy. And as a democracy, I think all of us are very proud of. A democracy where we've seen a change of government, a very smooth change of government in 2015. We actually as well saw an elections in 2011 where the opposition won the majority in parliament, and it was very smooth. We had no controversy. So yes, our democracy is alive and well, so the gentleman's right from that perspective. But I remember my mother used to say sometimes, don't ask questions if you don't really want to know the answers. And when we invited CARICOM to come and be part of this process with us, we must know that we're going to get answers. And we must know that those answers will be truthful answers. And so the fact that we don't like the answers that we've gotten from CARICOM is indicative of the behavior of the people who lost these elections. And I want to say I agree with Orin that with everything you've said, and to remind you that the government of Canada funded the CARICOM mission to Guyana. Those people that came to Guyana came here with tremendous sacrifice for their personal life coming into Guyana during the COVID-19 crisis. But this is to tell you the commitment by the international community to support Guyana at this difficult time. That Canada actually funded that entire mission. And Orin also spoke about the OAS and the Commonwealth and CARICOM. Today, there have been a very strong statement from the Private Sector Commission. There have been a very strong statement from the ABCE ambassadors in Guyana. And Orin is right, and everybody is speaking with one voice. Actually, there's only one set of people that are not, that is on the wrong side of democracy here. And this is APNU and their supporters. Everybody else, the entire international community, have spoken with one voice in this matter. And it cannot stand. While CARICOM had 3 observers, we've had every single day, every single counting station, we had observers in those counting stations. Every day, we had somebody in those counting stations all day. From 7:30 in the morning to 7:30 at night, we had people in the tabulation centers. And so we are 100% sure, not only that the recount reflects the will of the people, but we are also quite comfortable that the recount reflects what happened accurately on March 2nd, that was reflected in the SOPs that was generated as a result of March 2nd election. And if Mr. Mingo did not interrupt those elections in Region 4, we would have had an election result by March 5th. And this country would have moved on. All of this nonsense, and I call it nonsense, Yog, about people voting for other people and people voting for dead people. It's absolute nonsense, because there was absolutely no report. There was no report of any irregularity on election day. From all 2,339 polling stations across this country, there were 250 foreign observers and about 600 or 700 local observers deployed all over this country. Not one report of any irregularity. And that night, when the SOPs were prepared, every single SOP, 2,339 of them, were signed and certified by every political party in that polling station as being reflective of what happened in a credible, fair, and transparent way. And so to attempt to after the fact to try to discredit these elections with these false and fabricated allegations. When we were sitting in the room, Yog, and the AP and you boys started to read out these serial numbers, and the observer said, "Could I see the tick?" Because they were saying that out of the 100, they have 2 tick. And we said, "Could we see the tick?" They told us, "No, we can't see the tick. We can't. The observers cannot observe the tick." So we're saying, if you're telling me that a dead person vote, let me see the tick. They said, "No, you can't see it." It is quite obvious. And now that we know what Lowenfield was doing, because this matter went to Lowenfield and he also refused the observers from seeing the tick. Now it's very clear that this was part of a massive conspiracy all along. But because the CARICOM observers were in the room and all the local observers were in the room, and you had the OAS there and so on, it was very difficult for them to interfere with that process other than attempt to create this horrible smokescreen of lies and scampishness that they've done throughout that process, and attempting now to derail our elections, our democratic elections. It's actually quite appalling and very, very troubling for people who treasure our democracy.
But both of you, Orin and Captain, look, if APNU AFC up to today, 24th day of June 2020, if up to today they had any intention of allowing a declaration that could say they have lost, if they had any intention, they would not have let their cronies attack Maya Motley and attack all of these international leaders the way they're attacking. Now, these are not just ordinary people. It's Harman attacked Ralph Gonzalez. It's the head of the Department of Political Information attacking Maya Motley. These are so-called, well, I can't call them government anymore. This is squatter government's spokesperson. Orin.
I wouldn't pay too much attention to the sound and fury. People who get into the political arena, as I said the last time I was on Kite Radio, are big boys and girls. They understand that blows are going to be thrown. They understand that barbs are going to be flung about. And I think I wouldn't pay too much attention to this. Imran is actually not wrong to say that this is an unusually outspoken statement from Mia Motley. That is correct. But I would say to him that she's being unusually outspoken because these are unusual circumstances. What CARICOM is seeing from their perspective is an extraordinarily brazen attempt to manipulate the results of an election. It is so obvious that it is sometimes comical in its obviousness. After the Court of Appeal ruling, after he had presented every other report that he had been asked to do at the 11th hour, the 11th and a half hour, this one came out in record time. Mm-hmm. Went from tossing 200,000 plus votes to tossing 115. How you do that? I mean, this is so brazen and comical in its attempts that I think that the leaders of CARICOM, and there were some grumblings from the Prime Minister of the country I live in now, Keith Rowell. The leaders of CARICOM were genuinely taken aback with the sheer brazenness of this effort. And I think that there's a fair bit of disappointment as well in President Granger for not, up until this point, conceding an election that he must know that he is lost.
But Orin, you mentioned something just now. The Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, he made a statement indeed, and part of what he said was, I don't have a good feel about this. I don't feel good about this at all. Well, my brother, I can tell you, nobody here in Guyana feels good about this at all.
CARICOM has a good governance charter, and when Rowley songs off, when Gonzalez songs off, when Mia Motley songs off, they are sounding off in defense of CARICOM principles. What they are seeing is one of their biggest and most important and influential member states, heading for rogue state status. And they're concerned. Yes, you can argue, I willingly concede the argument that that is a level of intervention from one head of state into the affairs of another that is very unusual, yes. But is it warranted and necessary? Yes, because this is an unusual situation. And I think that something else is happening. I'm going to let Gerry in a minute. I think that something else is happening. It seems to me, what I've been reading between the lines is that the various actors outside of Guyana are attempting to stiffen the spine of the chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission because they recognize the extraordinary pressure that she's under. Mm-hmm. Some of the pressures of her own making, because after the debacle of early March, why certain people remained in position, I don't know. But they recognize that she's under extraordinary pressure to push this in a certain direction. And I believe, yes, some of the statements are interventionist, but they're interventionist for a reason, because they are trying to stiffen the spine of the lady at the center of all this, who is under unprecedented pressure. I don't think any of us, not even a businessman as capable as Gerry is, I don't think any of us wants to be in her shoes and doing her job, because that is plenty pressure.
Mm-hmm. So, Captain, you had, unfortunately, we lost you for a minute there. Orin has posited that, some of what the CARICOM leaders are doing is to actually lend kind of a positive support, understanding that the tremendous pressures the chairman of GCOM is under. And Leonard, you and I spoke of this today on radio. When you see the statements of Maya Motley, and when you see what Lowenfield did to that chairman yesterday, that has to be a sad day in Guyana that Mr. Lowenfield could put his chairman in such a position. One report as different as another, one position as different than another. But Captain, over to you.
Well, I did say to you on this program before that I have always expressed a high sense of confidence in the ability and the knowledge and the integrity of the chairperson of GCOM, and I still do today. And for me, this matter of interference is a huge issue. I've seen in 2011, I've seen in 2015, I've seen praises for the guidance and intervention of the ABCs at the time. And today, I am very, very grateful that the OAS and the Commonwealth and the ABC ambassadors and CARICOM is so engaged in protecting the democracy in Guyana. And the people who are attempting to in this transparent and brutal way. In fact, when you saw what happened in March 3rd and 4th and 5th, it was so brutal. It was so barefaced and transparent. I agree with her, and I've never, ever heard about and seen rigging an election to be so barefaced and bold. There's a gentleman, Cheeseman, that wrote a book, How to Rig an Election and Don't Get Caught. I was looking at it, and I went through that entire book, and he and I were talking. They have never, whoever developed this strategy, whoever owned this rigging strategy here, the first line, the second line, because the first line obviously was what happened with Mingo, and then the second line is what happened here now with Lowenfield. And then if you also understand that the boxes that end up without documents in East Coast, that was the epicenter of Mr. Mingo's interference in the East Coast. And so I am also convinced that the fact that Mingo told the deputy returning officers to tell the presiding officers not to put the documents in the boxes was all part of the plan. So that if Mingo had gotten away with what he was doing with the SOPs in March, and that matter had gone to an election petition would then dictate audit it would have been an audit. And when you go to where the epicenter of Mingo's fabrication numbers, you could not approve it because there was no documents. There would not have been any documents to support an audit. And so to me, when I look at this was all part of a very, very well orchestrated rigging mechanism to interfere with the administration of these elections. And when I listen to Lowenfield, who Guyanese task, because he was the chief election officer of Guyana, still is, he spent $8 billion to do these elections, and then admit and confess to the nation that in his view, these elections were not credible. I mean, pays back our $8 billion. What nonsense is that? And so I believe this is all part of a very evil and wicked strategy to interfere with the democratic process of Guyana. And it will not stand. The fact that Lowenfield is holding such an important and trusted position, and the fact that he would attempt to do to minus 10,000 votes every day for the last 115 days, or how much votes that is. I mean, it's just crazy. It's just crazy that he believed that is something that he could get away with, and they're upset because the international community and the world and CARICOM is not allowing them to get away with it. Right. I think they're absolutely crazy. And more so, the point we make is that in this time, when we are facing this court case with Venezuela and our sovereignty on this land, to believe that Guyana could deal with this by ourselves is the most craziest thing. Correct. We need our bilateral partners. We need CARICOM. We need the OAS. We need the Commonwealth. And to believe that we could somehow do this by ourselves and break ranks and abuse the leaders of CARICOM, these people, something has gone wrong with them, and they certainly do not deserve to be sitting where they are.
Correct. Orin, you wanted to say?
No, I just wanted to chime in to what Gerry has said. Gerry has had an extraordinarily close-up view of the process that I haven't had. I say to my friends, but on the APNU side and on the PPP side, and I've never seen the country as divided as it is now, I have to say. But what I say is that I apply my common sense, and I apply whatever analytical ability that I possess to make certain deductions. And
you didn't say it rightly. You need to add the one line more. I love
it.
I have said all that I'm going to say tonight. I slightly modified what I said the last time.
Okay.
No, I apply my common sense and whatever analytical ability I have to the situation, and it is clear as the sun comes up in the east that the governing coalition lost this election. And had the president been better served than he is right now by his team of advisors, he would have conceded the election and avoided putting the country through this situation that it's going through now. But there's a final resolution to be gone through and to be had. And I don't know, maybe in a month's time, this thing will be resolved. But this is Guyana, and I wouldn't put my head on a block concern.
We thought so 3 months ago, right? We thought so 3 months ago. So, ladies and gentlemen,
our inside the country is divided. Well, it is okay for countries to be divided along political lines. It's another matter to be divided along ethical lines.
This is something else, though.
Yeah, and I'm saying that I respect everyone's right to belong to a political party or to sympathize or to support a political movement. But what this country is now divided along the lines of ethics, along truth and dishonesty, it is so blatant that my mother said, "Show me your friends, I'll tell you who you are." And if you are hanging out and supporting a bunch of people that is being scampish, that is attempting to, in a blatant and barefaced manner, steal the Guyana's democracy, and you continue to support those group of people, those, that is not politics. this country is now divided along ethics, along people who stand for the truth and people who stand against the truth.
And principle, I like to point out to people who question my motives on the basis of what I have to say, that in 2015, and I have evidence of it, I made a social media post. In 2015, when the results of the elections were close, and there was a little bit of reticence, not comparable to now, but there was a little bit of reticence on the part of Ramotar to leave, I said very publicly that whatever difficulties that there were with the voting process were not enough to overcome the scale of the win, and you should go. I am saying the same thing 5 years later. I hope that I don't have to say the same thing in 5 years' time. But the thing that I see, Gerry touched on a good point, the thing that I see lacking in a lot of people is principle. Mm-hmm. The ends do not justify the means. You may think that Bharat, during his time in office, probably didn't do enough to tamp down corruption. That may be a valid point. You may mistrust him on the basis that there were several unexplained killings that he did not deal with judicially properly. Those are proper concerns to have. But sometimes you get a government that you don't want, and that is part of the democratic process. Gerry and I have had disagreements expressed on social media about Donald Trump, somebody he admires and somebody I don't. That is the democratic process. Mm-hmm. The other passport that I hold is a British passport. I got Boris Johnson and I got Brexit, and I wanted neither of them. So that is the democratic process. And we must be principled within ourselves to say that when you lose an election, you concede quickly and gracefully. That is a principle that I hold dear. I've been to countries where people have lost their lives for the vote here as well. But in other places I've reported from, such as Haiti, it's been a worse situation where people have literally bled and died for the vote, and the vote is a very precious thing. And the changing of a guard is a very, very sacred thing that a nation must go through. And you have to respect the process. And your disdain and your dislike for a particular side shouldn't mean that the end should justify the means of keeping your favorite side there. And I've seen a lot of this, and it's really broken my heart this election season, how divided we are.
Correct.
Along, as Gerry says, ethical lines. The end does not justify the means.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Orin. Captain, I want to come back to you on 2 points. One is that, ladies and gentlemen, Capt.Gerry outlined a couple of moments ago this seeming elaborate plan to rig these elections. If one were to connect the dots, that, okay, you look at the East Coast, how come it is Mingo and his deputy that instructed those polling areas and polling officers to not put this stuff in their boxes? You know, there has obviously been a plan, but, you know, Captain Lowenfield has put Mingo to shame with these numbers and his arbitrary so-called conducting of an inquiry and investigation, and decided, you know, Captain, the question I have for you, do you know if your vote was counted? Does Capt.Gerry Gouveia know whether his box was thrown away by Lowenfield or whether his vote was counted?
And you know, this is what is crazy about what Lowenfield has done. It is like what Lowenfield is attempting to say, that every single allegation made by these APNU operatives that was in the counting rooms, that if they call out 100 names and one name was ticked, they have now completely invalidated an entire box of valid votes on an allegation of a tick, which the observers were refused. We were refused the right to observe the tick, and he is now saying if there's only one tick if there's only one allegation of a tick in a box, that entire box is invalidated. Now, I don't know which law and which part of logic Loinfield get that from, but I will say to you, Loinfield and myself was in the army together, and I sent Loinfield a message about 2 weeks ago, and I said to him, Loinfield, you're still a young man, and there's a life after these elections. You've done a wonderful job for the elections itself. You've done a wonderful job in this recount. Please bring this to a credible end. He didn't answer me, but it was a message I sent to him that there's a life after these elections. Now, he obviously made a choice. He made a choice to completely fabricate this report that he's given to the chairperson. But there's no way on the face of this earth that one single man could somehow corrupt and transform the election results in Guyana by his whim and fancy. And the chairperson of GCOM and the commission will have to deal with that. And luckily, I have confidence in the chairperson of GCOM to do the right thing. Right. And I believe the right thing will be done. And Loinfield crazy and corrupted and criminal report that we saw there, trying to disenfranchise 115,000 Guyanese, will not stand. It will not stand yesterday, it will not stand today, and will never stand. The international community and the population of Guyana will never. And I made the point today on my Facebook page that I expect General Granger to behave with honor and do what honorable military senior officers would do. Behave with dignity. Concede and walk away from this. He is damaging every fiber and fabric of decency and integrity and honesty that he's ever been known for. And I'm one of the people that stood up and said that when I knew him in the army, those were 3 terms that I myself had attributed to David Granger. But it's difficult now to understand how a senior GDF officer could bring himself down to this level that will face the ridicule across the world for what he's doing to Guyana today.
Correct. So Orin, sorry, Leonard. Let me just put this at Orin's side. Orin, we have a problem, not another. We have a problem that nobody is talking about. I want you to harken back to when you had that little bit of civil problem, not you, but when Trinidad had experienced that little bit of a problem many, many years ago. Orin, what people are not talking about in Guyana is with the divide so stark, whenever that time comes that the APNU AFC has to leave office, their supporters will not accept, because even at the last moment, they're being told everybody's lying except their generals. What do we say to our people?
I think we have a responsibility to tamp down this talk. You are on the ground there. I am 1 hour away by light aircraft, by small aircraft. So you have a better feel than I do. But I think until and unless it becomes an actuality, we as media people, as broadcasters, should tamp down this talk.
Of course.
Let us see what happens. Let us appeal to as they say, the good angels, the better angels in people, and see how this thing plays out. If you were to say that 10 years from now, there are going to be people who believe that the election was taken from them, yes, I think that there's nothing that is going to convince people otherwise. This is why your leadership has a responsibility. Your leadership has a responsibility to let your followers know that, okay, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. We will wheel and come again. We will make Irfan a one-term president. We don't believe that he's the man. We think he's Bharat's man. Use whatever argument you have to deploy to say with some grace that you lost the election and you're going to come again and come back strong. What has actually happened? What happened in the election in terms of the numbers is that the small middle that the coalition captured in 2015 deserted it in 2020. One of the theories that I have about why the middle deserted the governing party in 2020 is because I think that the coalition seemed to me to expend more time and energy on the legals, on eking out more time in office than fighting off the NCM and various things, than in making as good a case as it could for 5 more years and why we are the people to take Guyana into its petro future. I saw a very interesting analysis from Nigel Hughes today. He was talking on the program of Rickford Burke, who is
yes. I've actually shared that clip
on behalf of the governing coalition. And Nigel made a very good point. Nigel said that as soon as Jagdeo lost the 2015 election, he took stock as to why that may have been, why some of the core supporters walked away from them and abandoned it. And from day one, after the loss, started working the communities, working the various things, and laying the groundwork for his success. And he did succeed in 2020. So I thought that was a very astute bit of, an honest bit of analysis from Nigel. And this is what it is going to take. This is what it requires. It is required on the part of the governing coalition, which has lost this election. You need to resolve certain questions. You need to ask why you didn't turn out your core support in the numbers that you should have to give yourself a bigger Region 4 cushion. That's one. Why the middle deserted you, and that's two. And the weakening of your main coalition partner, the AFC, which you first saw in the local government elections. They're going to have to answer questions of succession around David Granger, who will not be of age to compete in 2025, who's going to be the leader of the opposition. And these sorts of questions they've got to resolve. But most of all, they need to sit down and to come up with a sound strategy about how they regain power in 2025. 2020 is gone. Think about 2025. Irfan Ali will have the keys to the Ferrari, the keys to the supercar, right? That is the petro economy. That is a very, very big advantage. How do you overcome that? These are questions you should be sitting and thinking about now, rather than endlessly litigating a case that you have already lost and that you're going to lose at the CCJ.
But Orin, you said it right, and this is the beauty of democracy. In 2025, if we don't like, and I don't care how much money the PPP have at their disposal to spend, a population must always have the right to choose to change the government. Right. And this is what the riggers is attempting to take away from us now. That right to choose our government of our choice. And so in 2011, we had a fair and free election, and the opposition won the parliament. In 2015 and in 2020, democracy worked. And we want to have the ability to change the government in 2025 if they do not do the things that they said they were going to do. And that is a sacred right that every one of us must protect. Listen, those of us who grew up in the 70s and the 80s will understand how precious this freedom is for us. Because when we didn't have it, when we got it, when Desmond Hoyt brought Guyana out of the dark ages and brought back democracy to Guyana and brought back fair and free elections and brought back free market and free enterprise systems. I lived through that transition, and I will tell you it was night and day. It was a beautiful feeling of freedom. And what we got since then, I never again ever want to go back to the time when we have to live in fear of our government, in fear of the fact that we can't, in a fair and free way, choose the government of our choice. And what is frightening about this, Orin, is decent people that I worked with and I knew for years. I am seeing them today, and they are trying to defend this atrocity in our democracy. I am listening to them. I'm listening to people coming up with all kinds of fabricated and dishonest narratives to support what Lowenfield has done about valid votes. In fact, what Lowenfield is doing is attempting to invalidate 115,000 valid votes. And
but Captain, he's
and
also.
when I see honest people, when I see people, professional people that I have worked with, are doing that, it sick me to my stomach.
Correct. But he's also trying to, and I'm going to come over to you now, Leonard, because it is said that Lowenfield is also trying to push our good Madam Chairman into a very hard, tough spot. He's pushing her. And unfortunately, Madam Chairman should never be in the spot where she seems to be pushed to be. It's supposed to be a democratic process. But ultimately, she will have to make that call. And it is very unfortunate that that's the shape of how things will be. But Leonard, you were you wanted to bring up the aspect of Mr. Gaskin's statement, I think.
Well, obviously, I want to ask if this is something, if you would have paid attention, gentlemen, to what he would have said, that he would have analyzed, paid attention from day one to where it eventually evolved to. I want to ask you if it's a split between the APNU AFC, if it is maybe that we're going to see after the elections total dissolution of the AFC. I'm not sure, but going forward, it is very it is very sounding that you have the president's son-in-law, but also he's an executive of the AFC coming out with such a hard statement at that point in time. I want to hear your thoughts on that. This is something that people have not been really paying attention, that he is the president's son-in-law at the end of the day.
This episode has really damaged the AFC. Local government election damaged them. This, I don't know. My hunch is this might finish them off. Because what those of us looking for the strengthening of middle ground politics in Ghana wanted and expected to see was a party serving as the Jiminy Cricket for its coalition partners, the conscience for its coalition partners. Its members in the government, if anything, have been more vocally in support of the bad actions, or as vocal in support of the bad actions as their partners on the APNU side, and that has been very disappointing to see. It was gratifying from the point of view of people who have faith and belief in this entity. It was gratifying to hear Nigel Hughes's candid analysis of where they went wrong. And he seemed to be tacitly admitting, at least to me reading between the lines, that they lost this election. But it was gratifying to hear such a candid analysis emerging. But this has been a really damaging episode for them. And I don't know how they will emerge out of it. I don't know if space and vacuum has been created for another third force to emerge with a little more strength. We will have to wait and see. But it was quite a strong statement from Hans Gaskin. I saw him attacked as being opportunistic, timing a little bit too late, and this kind of thing. But as far as I recall, he said a variation of the same thing back in April, I think.
Correct.
That's correct.
And he added the phrase, "Who vex loss?" I don't believe him in those figures, right? I remember him saying that. And who vex loss? It is stunning to me that of all of the fine people I know in government, it is stunning to me that he seemingly is the only person of principle to step out of his crease and to call a spade a spade. It is quite stunning to me. Quite stunning to me.
Mm-hmm.
And he's the tank man.
And Captain, here is another dimension to what is happening presently. And Orin, look, any government, for there to be a successful, good governance of any government, there has to be a good opposition. And what is happening here is throwing a lot of shade onto the operations of a good opposition. So it's not good any which way you look at it, Captain. How do you see the shape of an opposition in the National Assembly soon?
Well, it really do makes it difficult. I mean, we have to find a way of working together as a people. But makes it very, very difficult to sit around a table with people who have been so grossly unethical and dishonest and scampish. But we have to do it. And I think that one of the points that Orin was making, look, the PPP cannot win these elections with Indian votes alone. And the PNC cannot win these elections with Afro-Guyanese votes alone. You have to win the middle ground. You have to win moderate thinkers. And you have to win them by winning their hearts and minds, their honesty. They're not going to follow you blindly, like the AFC learned. You have to win their hearts and minds. And the fact that this level of absence of integrity is now dominating the conversation, they're going to have a very, very difficult time. They have to do a lot to repair and win the support of the middle ground. They have to do a lot of work because none of the two of them. This is not about race anymore. This is not about that. So long as my base supports me, I'm going to win these elections. Cannot happen, and it didn't happen. It didn't happen in 11. It didn't happen in 15. It certainly did not happen in 2020. There had to be a huge crossover of votes, even to give the coalition the 200 and how much thousand votes that they had. That was just not one race. That was all races of Guyanese that give them that advantage to have that amount of votes. And same thing to do with the PPP. This is not just about one ethnic vote that did this. This is about a crossover vote. And that crossover vote is being betrayed by this level of reckless irresponsibility and dishonesty.
There's a deeper structural problem in our political setup that we're going to have to reckon with. And the problem in a nutshell is the winner-take-all nature of the politics. Irfan is young. He has a real opportunity and a real challenge healing a really, really broken nation in terms of its political and ethnic relationships. And it's going to be very hard. Now, if things had played out in early March, as they might have based on the results, there had been elections, a swift count, and a swift concession, and a swift change of government. Irfan would have been smart to say that I will look at the two top performers in the last coalition government and I can keep them. I know that we will be suspicious of them, whether they will retain the loyalty, whether they will snitch, whether they will take tails out of school from the cabinet. But I will take and keep two of the top performers and show that while a government of national unity is not possible, let's be real. There's too much water under the bridge. While a government of national unity may not be possible at this point, I'm going to make this small gesture in that direction. But what has happened since the election and the recount and everything else has totally eroded any sort of residual trust that may have existed between the parties to begin.
Right.
But you
Right.
know, one of the
So,
flip side. Okay, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
One of the flip sides of that, and I think this issue was raised to the gentleman, was not having a very strong opposition. If you look at the parliamentary makeup, several committees which are being headed by opposition members. The Public Accounts Committee, which has to do with the AG report, it looks after spendings of government. You also would have, I think, the Foreign Relations and Natural Resources Committee, different committees, and they're not there. It's frightening to think in this time when we are dealing with oil, and I think Orin would have talked about that a little earlier. We're dealing with oil. It's not good in this time here not to have a very strong opposition. So it is. There's a lot of things to go forward to think about. One of the persons, as I'm on the floor, I want to ask somebody just text us here and ask if we could probably ask a gentleman what are the thoughts of this being considered coup d'état.
Of this being considered what?
They
A coup d'etat.
what Lowenfield would have done yesterday, whether it could be considered as such.
No, I don't think so. I don't think we've gotten there. I mean, and I don't believe our military would support such an illegality. The Guyana Defense Force have always stood on the side of the rule of law. When I was there anyway, in the latter years, and I don't believe that they will be party to any kind of strategy like that to secure government. I don't accept that.
Leonard, you notice how he added in the latter years, right? So let's
Yeah,
keep
yes.
that in mind to
Don't forget he was
to
part of
bring
the
our
army too. Like,
Yes, we gotta remember these words of Captain in the future. Orin, you expressed optimistic. You're still reserved and optimistic, and I want to tap into that a little bit more. But from the following perspective, give us your optimism, because now we have seen many twists and turns. Unless you are willing to say, no, AFC has won these elections, you are a fraud, you are no good, you cannot be accommodated, you are out of everything. Now, Lowenfield has played his hand. That is clear. The population is concerned. What other cards is there up their sleeves? How do we speak to I want you to speak to the optimism against that backdrop. And yes, I know, and I've said, Leonard and I have said to viewers and listeners today, that the fact that people like Maya Motley has spoken now is so that she's assuring us, she's not just speaking to Lowenfield's problem and the electoral problem. She's speaking to us as a people of CARICOM, for us to remain calm, for us to allow processes to happen, and to remind us that the world is on the side of the people. So, Orin, I'm going to leave that question for you to talk about in terms of, let's talk optimism in the face of what's the next card that Lowenfield himself might be playing.
I think that I want to misquote. I think it was Martin Luther King. The arc of the moral universe eventually bends towards the truth. I know I want to employ an analogy as well. You know, sometimes a door is stuck and you're pushing and you're pushing and you're pushing and suddenly it's opening and you're falling. Mm-hmm. I think that just as suddenly, this may all be over. You asked me for an optimistic take. Mm-hmm. I am giving you an optimistic take.
Great.
This is just as suddenly, this will all be over. Mm-hmm. I believe that the Caribbean Court of Justice will dispose of this matter very quickly. And I think that it will be a loss for the coalition. At that point, the legal backing for the chairman of GCOM will be very clear. and she will do what she has to do. We have the constitutional problem is a big one, and we've got to resolve that, or we'll find ourselves right back where we are right now. The problem is that succeeding governments come into office and they grow to like the Constitution and they get comfortable with it, and changing it becomes less of a priority. So
but you pointed to something that was extremely important a couple of minutes ago. Sorry to interject.
No problem.
What you pointed to is spot on. Here is what has happened. Indeed, with a 33, 32, and 1, a 33, 31, and 1, there was likelihood that you could have serious movements towards changing the Constitution. There was great likelihood. Now you have a parliament or a National Assembly that has so much mistrust for each other.
There's no trust.
Yeah, that one would wonder, how will we ever bridge this divide? It's going to be left into the laps of our children to deal with this matter, and that's a shame, isn't it?
You ask me a question, I can't answer that one. I don't know when we'll get around to dealing with it, but I believe that the legals around this issue may soon be at an end. That's my optimistic take. Don't come back in August and say Orin said, right? The legals around this process may soon be at an end, and the direction in which the chairperson of the commission has to tread is very clear. She's under enormous pressure. And the CEO has had the effect, the CEO's reports, especially the hastily produced one after the Court of Appeal verdict, has had the effect of backing her into a corner. So it may have been smart play on the part of the opposition to go right away to Trinidad, to the CCJ, and to expedite this matter, because one never knows. I know Gerry expressed confidence in Justice Singh, but given the enormous pressure that she has been placed under, she might well have been in a quandary about how to circumvent a rogue member of staff who was not doing what she had instructed him to do. So I believe, just to wrap up very quickly, I meandered a little. I believe that the process could be over sooner than we think. Unfortunately, it's going to be as a result of a legal decision rather than on the part of any of the main actors to, by themselves, step in and end this in a responsible manner.
Thank you.
But Orin, I just want to, even with our appeal court, the process,
right?
I think we have lost sight of the fact that the lawyers attempted to have the appeal court issued 6 orders. The appeal court rejected outright 5 of those orders, 5 of them,
right?
And dealt with 1, and said, which to me, it's a logical addition. Even though
there has more leeway than I give her, than I realize.
Correct. So the appeal court dismissed outright 5 of those orders, and then said one thing. They said more votes mean more valid votes. Now, more valid votes are described in the ROPA. In fact, the ROPA describes what invalid votes are very, very clearly. Now, you could attempt to manufacture, Lowenfield could attempt to manufacture as much as he wants, what he believes an invalid vote is and what a valid vote, but those things are in the ROPA and it's there.
Okay.
And if you look at what the 5 things, the 5 orders that the appeal court rejected, all of the things Lowenfield did was rejected by the appeal court. But I will have the lawyers deal with that because it's ludicrous.
Correct. In fact, last night we had Sanjeev Dattad in, and yes, I mean, the win that APNO FC seems to think they got at the Court of Appeals yesterday was nothing. It was without substance. And viewers and listeners, to remind you, Anil Nandlal explained it well. It's only valid votes that matter in any elections. Because, for example, he had said that if there's a section of the law says that, if you breach a law, you are going to be fined $20,000. Does the law say, legal dollar? Does the law say counterfeit? Does it have to say not counterfeit for it to be proper?
Anil said that, but he didn't take a chance of leaving it completely in the lap of the jury.
But you know, to Orin, I sat in the counting stations.
Yeah.
And I have seen a great effort as we were opening the box and we were taking the ballots out of those envelopes to count them. I have seen a great effort made, first of all, to put the blue light on every single ballot, every single one of them, to first of all authenticate the legality of the ballot paper.
Mm-hmm.
And then to make sure that the ballot paper was stamped, to make sure that the X clearly indicate the party that you want to vote for. Mm-hmm. And there were cases where valid votes were invalidated, and everybody in the room agreed that it was an invalid vote because we could not, and it was a mistake made on the first night. We have seen that over and over. We have seen where invalidated votes on the night when they were preparing the SOPs became valid votes during the recount, and it was nominal. But we have seen how valid votes were invalidated and invalidated votes were validated, and so all in the final analysis, all of the SORs, you had valid votes, cancel votes, and so on, and so. This issue of valid votes is what it is. All of the SORs were based on valid votes. All of the regional certificates were done with valid votes. So I have no problem with valid votes.
Well, that is true, Jerry. But the CEO's report seems to be very central to the process. What if we go through Groundhog Day, and she sent him back 6 times, and they give her the same thing? Isn't that possible?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would have the lawyers would have to deal with that. In my view, I'd fire him.
Right. So let's go on, Orin.
Quickly to your point, Jerry raised an important point about describing the process, and that's very valuable insight. Very valuable insight. Thanks for that, Jerry. The key part of what me and Motley had to say today, and I stated it at the beginning of the show, was the insertion of the words "as certified by the very staff of the Guyana Elections Commission." In other words, in criticizing the CEO, she says your own staff certified the numbers that you ended up tossing. So that is a key consideration.
And particularly, and it's important to understand that every allegation made against a vote, it's an allegation. Every single one of them was an allegation. And so Loingfield cannot be judge, jury, and executioner and somehow give legal life to an allegation made against a box or a vote. And I mean, it's just mind-boggling that he would do this to his professional career and his professional integrity, that he believed that somehow he became endowed with the right. Is that a mango there, Gordon?
It's mango. I have an analogy to make. It's mango season, and I have a fruit bowl.
How did you see the mango?
I have a fruit bowl full of mangoes in front of me. Let's say Gildarie says, Gordon thief a box full of my mangoes. And on the basis only of Gildarie's accusation, I am jailed for 5 years. That is what the CEO did. It may not be true, even though I may look like a mango thief, right? But it may not be true that I stole Gildarie's mangoes, and you will lock me up for 5 years without vetting the charges. That is in effect what the chief elections officer did. Every charge was given credence. And the people should read, before people form firm opinions, they should read what CARICOM had to say about the process of questioning everything. Read what CARICOM had to say about the process of questioning everything.
And Gordon, I was there in that room, and I was there watching the CARICOM observers walk from room to room, sat there, listened. They spent 15, 20 minutes. They went to another room. And they were, I'm telling you, when I watched them, I got tired. But those people were exceptionally diligent. Now, you know, we went to great lengths. The government went to great lengths to block the Carter Center from coming into Guyana. They went to great lengths to block the Carter Center from coming into Guyana. And they opened up the welcome red carpet for CARICOM. And President Granger said that CARICOM is an important legal part of the process.
They're the best interlocutor or something to that.
Yes. And that the CARICOM report is exceptionally important in the GCOM's work. And now suddenly you're angry with CARICOM because they're not telling you what you want them to say. President Granger's integrity and his word and his honesty is on the line. I mean, and people could do what they want to say what they want.
I agree with that.
But if you look at his statement,
he said not once, not twice, 3 or 4 times that he will accept and the CARICOM report is important. And he said those things, and he said it to the Prime Minister. Well,
if you look at the statement of Mia Motley today, she said there's a clear and accepted route if you have any objections, the elections petition, and she's also saying that no vote should be disenfranchised. Very, very clear indications. I want to ask you, gentlemen, if you believe this might be the route that the Caribbean Court of Justice might be taking. Or this is not something that would be considered that is before them.
Repeat the question, please.
Do you believe that the fact that the elections petition fact might be something that would be at the back of the mind of the judges, the Caribbean Court of Justice next week?
Gerry, you go first. You know process better than I do.
No, but I think that is more of a legal. That would be a legal. It's a legal question that need a legal answer, and I would not be presumptuous to go there. I would only say that it is my expectation that the Caribbean Court of Justice will deal with this matter expeditiously, and that they will understand what is at stake, and that we cannot have any ambiguity in terms of what is going to happen next. We cannot. The chairperson of GCOM and the commission of GCOM, those 7 commissioners, not Lowenfield, but the 7 commissioners is the one that got to make the decision. So Lowenfield could come with as much crookedness as he wants to come with, but the commission and the chairperson will have to make that determination, and the Caribbean Court of Justice need to empower them to make sure it happens.
Right. So let me also share this. Sorry, Orin, that Michael Kozak would have released a tweet in which he said Guyana's electorate spoke clearly and respected international observers, OAS officials, CARICOM have certified the recount results as credible. We join them in calling for a conclusion to the electoral process in Guyana and the announcement of a winner. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the most recent statement to emanate with regards to these recount and the outrage at Lowenfield's figure. Sorry, Orin, I just had to cut in to bring this story.
That's fine. That's been the theme pretty consistently from the international community. The international community is chomping at the bit to resolve this thing. You get the sense that international patience with our dysfunction, with our shenanigans, with our twists and turns, is almost at the end. And something quite significant may be on the verge of happening. But what has constrained the international community thus far is a respect for the legal process. We have actually been in court for 15 solid months, right? For 15 solid months, 15 months on and off. And the thing that has constrained the international community, I believe, is the notion that you should let the legal process play out. What Mia Motley did today was very interesting. Now, had I been advising her, and this is part of what I do, I offer communications advice to people. Had I been advising her, I might have urged caution. I might have said, let the Caribbean Court of Justice make its decision, lest you be accused of being premature and of whatever else, of speaking out of turn before the process had been decided. But I think she is one of the smartest people in politics anywhere, right?
Mm.
I think she knew that. She made a calculation and she made a determination that she needed to speak and speak now. Protocol be damned. And,
Right.
and I think her timing was very, very interesting, as was the timing of the person who is going to replace her in the chair.
Correct.
Ralph, they recognize what an extraordinary situation this is, and time is of the essence, and you have to say what you need to say and say it very clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
say it very
given
clearly and say it early.
Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, Mia Martin, she's a Queen's Counsel,
Mhm.
and she's an exceptionally intelligent and smart and popular leader in the Caribbean.
Mhm.
And the fact that her voice and her words echo the voice of the Western democracies, of the OAS, of the Commonwealth, and now of the Secretary of State of the United States, everyone is speaking with the same voice. And I will make an observation. I made it here the other night. Ralph Gonsalves have never been on the same side of the United States on any political issues in this region.
Yes, it's true.
And this is the first
Venezuela,
time that Ralph
Maduro, Cuba,
Gonsalves
all of that.
is exactly
That
on the same side
That
of
is
the
so
United
true.
States on this issue. And that
Mhm.
tells you how wrong, how very wrong this administration in Guyana is today in attempting to do what they're doing.
Mhm.
Ralph Gonsalves have never been on the same side. You look at it all the time. He's always been against the United States on these issues, but he's on the same side.
On Venezuela, and all of
Correct.
these.
Well,
Correct.
I hate to bring the politics right back into it, but you know what? The PNC got together with WPA, and they have forced Ralph Gonsalves to get together with the US on this matter. I hate to put it like that, but ladies and gentlemen, I wish to remind you all that we have just gotten word that Michael Kozak has sent out a message that Guyana's electorate spoke clearly, and respected international observers like CARICOM have certified the recount results as credible. The United States joined them in calling for a conclusion to the electoral process in Guyana and the announcement of a winner. Captain and Orin, we have had a number of persons. We have had Sir James Mitchell, former Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We have had Sir Ron Saunders, who is an ambassador at large, and also he is well known and he speaks well for and of the entire Caribbean community. We have had the OAS. We have had the, well, there you go. We have had Commonwealth nations. We have had the United States. We have had Canada. Every nation almost you can think of has somehow or the other gotten themselves involved in these elections. Yet, it is only Granger and his small band of merry men that continues to befuddle people of this country and continues to thwart the will of the electorate. Gerry, as we're coming down to the end of the program, tomorrow is the commencement of the hearing at the CCJ. We know that we all continue to be optimistic, but Gerry, the truth is, if nothing else, APNO AFC have succeeded in drawing it out, yet another week goes by. And in the process, Kaiser News has reported lands are being, I would say, stolen, state lands, because they don't have a mandate now State lands are being taken, state assets are being moved, contracts are being given out, and all of this, the tender board. Leonard, I would like to call out the head of the tender board. You are acting in an illegal manner. Gentlemen and ladies, cease and desist from giving out these huge things. And Gerry, I come back to you before going to Orin, because I understand there is another cabinet or cabinet session or ministerial session due on the 30th of June, in which they're inviting their ministers and sub-ministers to come and present a report of this period under review. So for this set of people, it's business as usual, Gerry. Over to you, Captain.
And it's sad. And only today we had, we were looking at the issue of the COVID outbreak that is happening in the Moruca area. And you're looking at what is happening throughout the country. And you're looking at a government that does not have the legitimacy to really pull people together and deal in a very effective way with this pandemic. And it's very concerning that the lives of Guyanese citizens could be at risk because of this attempt to stay in power illegally. Legitimacy is very important for the government, and what they are doing while they're going through this caretaker period is very concerning, Yog. And I want to just end what I'm saying by saying this to you, that the geopolitical positioning of Guyana, and if people want to understand why is it that the world is so focused on what is happening in Guyana, I want to say two things. One, the president of Suriname, was a staff sergeant. He was not even a commissioned officer in the Suriname military. He was a staff sergeant. He was a non-commissioned officer when he took over the government of Suriname by a military coup. And he did the honorable thing today or yesterday. David Granger was trained at Sandhurst. David Granger, he was an officer and a gentleman. He was an officer that stood on the platform of integrity and honor. And he is not doing the honorable thing. And let me tell you, the international community, and particularly the United States, is not going to allow Guyana, never going to allow Guyana to become another Venezuela. They are not going to allow Guyana to become another Venezuela. The Caribbean forms the third border of the United States. Canada is in the north, Mexico is in the south, and the Caribbean is the third border. This Caribbean border is only as strong as every individual Caribbean nation and their ability to be legitimate and lawful. With the collapse of Venezuela and what is happening in Venezuela, it is causing a serious weakening of the underbelly of the regional security in the Caribbean. If Guyana falls and is now hijacked by an illegitimate government, Caribbean national security is threatened, and the U.S. third border is threatened. Notwithstanding the fact that with this oil will attract a new criminal mine. Criminal mines follow big money, and we will have an influx of new criminal mines into this region. And if we don't have a government that have the legitimacy and the respect, it will cause a serious weakening of the underbelly of regional security. And I will say to you, the United States will not stand by idly and allow another Venezuela in this region.
Thank you, Captain. Orin.
Dr. Mahadeo, you're an accountant. You're familiar with the concept of a sunk cost. Sometimes you're in it so deep that you might as well keep going. I don't know if that is the situation with which the president is confronted. Phil Collins had a song, "I'm playing for keeps, I'm in too deep." I don't know the extent to which he was influenced to go in this direction of intractability, to the point now where withdrawal withdrawing is to massively lose face. I think that may have something to do um, with the position in which he finds himself. But you know who knew early in March that they lost this election? Mr. Granger. He's very smart
Yes.
and studious and diligent, and he saw the figures. I think very early on a strategy was agreed to have new elections on annulment. And if you eventually pushed things towards saying that we can't trust this one and we have to do it over, then the statements of poll become irrelevant. You don't have to ask about them anymore because they're irrelevant. There's new elections. And new elections, by your time, new elections possibly give you a chance for Groundhog Day to do it again better. And I think that that was possibly the plan. I don't have evidence of it. This is my deduction working, my brain working, my independent brain working. And I think that was where the plan started, and it didn't quite go as expected.
Correct. Well, thank you for that, Orin, and Captain, thank you. Leonard, tomorrow we are going to continue to have a look at what's going on with regards to COVID. As we know, that continues tomorrow at 1:30, and I guess you would want to share with our viewers and listeners what they expect, because tomorrow at 3 starts the CCJ's deliberations.
Absolutely, Yogan. So we would probably start a little earlier tomorrow. I'm gonna be talking to management of the radio station tomorrow to see whether we could push it back so we could get in some of those COVID-19 stories. We're hearing some things that are deeply worrying in Region One. Not only teachers but lots of students and frontline health workers. Lots of the areas, villages have been closed down. So you have don't have access to food, and because of the fact that they've blocked flights to certain areas, you're getting very little information except what is coming through from the government and one, two other staff uh, persons telling us. So we need to get down and start looking at that
How much
tomorrow.
time do we have, gentlemen? Are we about to cut off on the Zoom chat, or
Go ahead,
do we
go
have-
ahead, go ahead, Orin.
You can go ahead, Orin.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that there are certain costs to not having a properly elected government in place. What, as Gerry is a businessman, as you would know, if you're an overseas investor looking to secure an agreement, you can't really get into a proper agreement with a government that the international community does not consider to be a stable or legitimate government, because the piece of paper that that agreement is written on could be ripped up or challenged or whatever. That is the first thing. And the second, and probably just as important thing, in this time of a pandemic, disbursement of funds from international agencies becomes difficult because there are issues of accountability, and international organizations and private companies have to account to their boards and shareholders about the responsible spend of funds and money. So your legitimacy becomes a real stumbling block to getting any business done effectively in the country, and that includes the business of pandemic management.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Gerry, any final comments from you?
Well, we are looking forward to the CCJ, and like I said, I myself, I was not as concerned with our appeal court ruling, and other than the fact that they have attempted to insert a word in the Constitution which was not there, but the word anyway is a word that we all live by, and all of the GCOM documents spoke to a valid vote. So, I mean, the fact that we are going to the CCJ, I hope that the lawyers take the opportunity to get the CCJ to in fact deal with all of the gray and all the gray areas. There must be no clouds and no ambiguity in the language. We need to get Guyana moving, and we need to get Guyana moving quickly. Like a lot of our businesses, you cannot believe the destruction and that has happened generally because of the political situation, but also because of the COVID-19. I mean, you know, my own company have been badly battered in all sectors, and we are fighting for survival every day. and to be fighting for survival with a country without a legitimate government. We have had so many workers that have been sent home all across the private sector, and there's no aid package that the government could help workers that lost their jobs or help businesses to stay afloat and recover. It's mind-boggling that the government, that the APNU and David Granger would allow this to continue, knowing very well that they have lost these elections. They knew they lost these elections.
Gerry, your line minister for business is Hans Gaskin, right?
No, he was. He's a former minister.
They have appointed somebody else.
Yeah,
Okay.
they would have replaced him.
Okay, right.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you for that, Captain. And Orin, it's been great to have you once again here. We certainly look forward to more interactions. Any words to your fellow countrymen here, Orin, before we say bye-bye?
Orin, when are you coming back to Guyana?
Gerry, I don't know. I love it where I am, but we will see. Somebody said that in coming from England to Trinidad, I was merely making a stepping stone, but we will see about that. But no matter where in the world I am, Guyana is very close to my heart. I follow developments there very closely. Mm-hmm. And in closing, the situation that we find ourselves in is very concerning. Mm-hmm. When this is over, I want to see a concerted effort at healing, because we've been, as a people, we've been bruised. Mm-hmm. I have seen people I love, people I respect and regard, put themselves in a place morally where they think that the end of keeping out Jagdeo justifies the means of doing so. And as a matter of principle, I can't agree with that. Right. And so these things have caused rifts in the Guyana family. And I want to see a concerted effort made on the part of whomever will assume power to heal these rifts, because we're in a bad place right now, a really bad place.
Thank you. Orin, thank you. Captain, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to quickly share some stuff with you. Remember, today we have had a statement by Maya Motley, the CARICOM chairwoman, that would have been speaking powerfully that no voter must be disenfranchised. And she questioned by what executive fiat did the chief elections officer determine to invalidate your votes. And later on during the day, we would have heard Peter Wickham in an interview talk about the selective memories and intellectual dishonesty of persons within the APNU AFC grouping as they try to continue to squat in office. Those are not his words. The latter ones are my words, of course. But ladies and gentlemen, all across the world, as of now, we are seeing that the ambassadors for Canada, US, UK, and of course, Europe would have released a statement. Added to that, of course, is the most recent statement from Michael Kozak, who is calling on the will of the electorate to be observed. The Commonwealth countries would have made another release. The OAS has made. So today, we have seen in one single day, the entire world. Mind you, ladies and gentlemen, when you talk about CARICOM, you're talking about a set of countries. When you talk about Commonwealth, you're talking about, for example, 54 countries in the Commonwealth alone. You're talking about the UK. You're talking about European Union. You're not talking about single countries here. So we must recognize that the entire world at this stage is looking with great dismay at what is happening in Guyana and is calling for the will of the electorate to be respected. I will want to close this program by reminding Mr. Granger, sir, you are squatting in the people's office. You have lost these March 2nd, 2020 elections, and we know you to be an honorable man, and we still hope that tomorrow, next day, you can move on and let this country breathe. Sir, ladies and gentlemen, those are just my words and my views, and they have nothing to do with my guests here. I know they are totally off of those views and they want to take the diplomatic approach. However, ladies and gentlemen, as we have been doing during our elections watch, we continue to call on the government to respect the will of the electorate. Yes, Captain.
I wanted to say, and I hope Cultural News would help the Ministry of Health. We've been having a lot of people coming back to Guyana on these Guyanese coming back home, and we have been pleading with the task force to allow them to come back home. Unfortunately, we're getting reports that a lot of them are coming back and they're being allowed to go home to quarantine and they cannot find them. I don't know if you saw the press release today, but I'm asking Kaito Radio and even your program every now to please urge Guyanese who come back home to report to the Ministry of Health and let them know your whereabouts. A lot of them have disappeared.
Thank you, Captain. And we endorse that call. Indeed, if you have returned home, please stay in touch with the authorities. And let me also endorse Mr. Leary Constantine Barclay, who has said today that he was dismayed that the authorities found it fit to publish a 5-year-old whose father who traveled with his father, and the father has been in contact with the authorities, yet they published the name of that 5-year-old as being recalcitrant. I'm sure it must have been a mistake, but yes, we want to encourage all. If you come to Guyana, please stay in touch with the authorities. Your health is our health, and our health is your health. So, Captain, thank you for that. Orin, thank you so much for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you all tomorrow at 1:30 on Elections Watch and COVID Watch with your host, Mr. Leonard Gildarie. I wish to say thanks to Kevin, to Kaito Radio, to Glenlal for making this program time-free, available to you all so that we can keep you updated. Remember, you can pray for this country of ours, and you can ensure that you remain as peaceful and as calm as you have always been. Do not share a racist post. Do not acknowledge a racist post. Do not even read a post filled with hate. Just ignore it and go to read something else, ladies and gentlemen. Don't be pushed into a corner and react in any way negative. The choice is yours, of course, but like how we depend on Mr. Granger to do the right thing, we depend on you all to also make the right choices in life. So, ladies and gentlemen, from Room 592, we urge you to stay safe, be calm, have a great night, and we say bye-bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you.